Hello, everybody. This is Steve Smith here at the Starr Conspiracy, partner and chief marketing officer. And while people are still rolling in, we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of housekeeping and introductions and things like that. I'm joined today by my friend Cameron Magee from Avad 3. Cameron, why don't you tell us a little bit about your agency and why you're here?
Thanks, Steve. I'm here because you're a friendly guy, and I appreciate you extending the opportunity. So thanks a lot. But yeah, I started Avad 3 in my dorm room. We do event production, so we're kind of behind the scenes at large conferences, running the audio and the video and the lighting and the staging, and making sure people in the back can hear, and making sure folks at home can see on the live stream, and making sure presenters get on stage at the right time, and that the slides don't freeze, and all the stuff that you don't really notice until it goes wrong. That's what we do, and we make sure that it doesn't go wrong. So that's a little bit about us. Just started doing AV in my church as a kid, and started the company in my dorm room, and here we are.
Well, cool. Well, hey, when we start off, we always like to start off with kind of a moment of gratitude. And I was hoping that maybe you could share with us something that you're grateful about here in this moment.
Man, I tell you, when I look back on this year, which I'm doing a lot right now, kind of closing out the year and thinking about next year, I'm most grateful for my wife. We have grown so much this year, and she's been so gracious and patient with me. When you're growing and you've got to travel more and do all these things and kind of pour in, she's been grateful to hold the reins at home. I got two young boys that are 3 and 4, and she's been holding the dam. And I'm looking forward to Christmas and New Year's and spoiling her and really thanking her for staying by my side through this tremendous growth. It's been a crazy year, so I'm most grateful for my wife. Thanks for asking.
That's awesome. And so yeah, and for me, my moment of gratitude is I discovered recently that my mom has been watching all of these webinars, and so I just wanted to take a moment to express gratitude to my mom. She is turning 87 in a few days, and as a business owner and an entrepreneur, I'm sure you just alluded to this. It can be a difficult road, and my mom and my dad built a company together, and really invested a lot of blood, sweat, toil, and tears to make that go while they were raising me and my brother. And so I'm really grateful to them for all they did, because it was hard. It was hard work, and I really am the beneficiary of all that, and I'm incredibly grateful. So, Mom, thank you very much, and thank you for watching.
Good shout outs, Tim. That's good stuff.
So the reason, just to kind of give the audience a little bit of background why Cameron's here is we're both members of an organization called Bureau Digital, which is sort of a consortium for business owners of digital agencies. And Cameron and I were at an event, and we started talking, and I was really blown away by his agency's origin story. I mean, your incredible, professionalism and polish, but then also just kind of the clients that you're working with. And so, what we're trying to do with this webinar series is offer insights for our audience of workplace technology founders, sales and marketing leaders, as they're trying to figure out the year ahead, knowing that these are difficult circumstances. Live events are, coming back in, and it's just like we have a lot of practical advice, and you have a lot of very good practical advice on how they can plan and save money and execute with a high degree of quality on these events. But let's start off a little bit. Tell us a little bit about, the origin story of your agency.
I'm happy to. I just started in my dorm room, and it's because I've always loved audio visual. I know that's kind of weird. Everybody has a thing that they're into, and I just love when a microphone sounds crystal clear in the back. I love a good camera shot. I was high-fiving. We had a big show on Friday night. I was just high-fiving one of our guys backstage. He's like, man, that camera shot looks so good. I was getting so fired up. He's like, you are absolutely the founder of an AV company. Like, you're such a nerd when it comes to this stuff. I love it. And just like I love when it's right, I hate when it's wrong. I cannot stand being at an event and something goes wrong. I was attending a workshop Tuesday in Chicago, and left and right, they were having all these little difficult problems. Microphones were dropping out, slides were freezing, and it literally like hurts in my heart. It's not just like my head, it's like my heart, and so even as a young person, I thought, well, that's what I want to do. It was just so crystal clear that that's what I want to do. And I'm from Arkansas, and we're still in Arkansas, and there's not a ton of opportunity here. And so my dreams were pretty small. And I just thought maybe someday I'll have 3 or 4 people, and we'll have a trailer and kind of run around and do little weekend conferences or something. But we've grown a lot, because it turns out if you do a really good job for somebody on their most important, stressful day of the year, they remember you and they start to take you with them. And so we've really blossomed and grown a lot. The 60 days before the pandemic, we had started going national for a few years. And those 60 days, we were like from Atlanta to Vegas and Detroit to San Antonio. And we were doing presidential campaigns, and just an incredible time, and then the pandemic hit. And I'll skip over that for now, but it was tough.
I mean, I want to, when you talk a little bit about your clients, I mean, one of the things that, of course, got my attention is when you were talking about who your clients are. So can you kind of like give us some headlines there?
Yeah, I don't mind. We're really honored to serve Walmart, which is the largest company in the world, Fortune 1. It's such an honor. We're here in Arkansas, and for our first few years as a company, we were nowhere near big enough to take care of them, but we're finally large enough that we do some of their larger meetings, and we're honored to be actively serving them in the production role, which is just always humbling every time we get to serve them. We were with them last night and with them again next month, and that's always an honor. And then, like I said, this is a relationship business. And so we started working for some agencies that then started doing some presidential campaigns, and then got to serve the White House directly in these past few years. And I can't talk about it a ton. I need to be careful and smart about what I share, and they have you sign so many things, as you can imagine, but I can share that we've done multiple events for the President of the United States. It's an honor to be with that person when they're addressing the free world. And all of those events that we've done with them have been like a 72-hour notice, because that's kind of how that works. And so we're with the largest company in the world, and the most powerful leader in the world, and we're usually under some pretty intense parameters, if those aren't intense enough as it is, and we still deliver. And I'm so proud of that.
And that's the office of the president. That's not the actual whoever is occupying the office at the time. That's right.
I love that. Yeah, you remember that from when I told you that story. When they called, they said, I don't care who you voted for. We're here to serve the office of the president. And the person that I was working for, he had been there for 19 years. And
Wow.
So he had served kind of red, blue, and everything. And I always love that. We're serving the office of the president, no matter who you voted for. I think that's very admirable.
Well, and I think that, I guess the key takeaway for me was just like, you probably have the 2 most demanding clients anywhere.
It. Yeah, I've got so many stories, and it's not, they deserve, they deserve the highest level of attention. They deserve, that it's not that they're demanding in like a personal way or something like that. Like, it can't be wrong. And so we've started using the phrase on all of our marketing stuff, flawless event production. It just cannot have a flaw. It has to be flawless. And so we're honored to serve them. And we're also honored to just serve nonprofits and all sorts of people in between. But on their biggest day of the year, when it's like, this is our fundraiser, or this has to be right, we're honored to be there and take care of the stuff that most event planners are the least familiar with. And so we usually really make a big impact for them, because the tech stuff's kind of their weakness, but we love it.
Well, and I know there's a lot of stuff that we really want to kind of get into some nuts and bolts for, founders, sales and marketing leaders who are looking, at their events plans for this year. But I want to take a step back, and, you mentioned kind of COVID, and, I think that it's, one of the things I know that, from our organization, it was, a demanding experience and certainly a fraught experience, but we didn't suffer anywhere near as much as the events planning industry. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what your journey was like going through that time and then coming out of it?
Yeah, it was tough. And I'd love to talk about it. I'm happy to now. Looking back, it's incredible how far we've come. And, this whole series you're talking about, marketing and downturn and everything, it's so applicable, because that wasn't that long ago and it hit us really hard. And so I'm happy to share. Friday the 13th of 2020, when it kind of hit for everybody, we went to zero revenue overnight. We don't have any kind of like retainer or like recurring revenue models. I mean, we do events. And so you either do the event or you don't, you either work or you don't eat, and so we went to zero revenue overnight. We lost everything. We had some deposits that were sent out that hadn't gotten paid. They just said, we're not going to pay them. We had some shows that were the next week and the next month and stuff, and they all just kind of canceled. And we were ready to do virtual right away. By serving Walmart and some of these, international organizations, we're really used to hybrid and virtual. And let's dial in the China office and let's have a remote presenter and a remote audience and a hybrid thing. But the world wasn't really used to that. That wasn't totally normal for like these big conferences and things we do. Their attendees were like, well, let's just wait 6 weeks. Everybody kept thinking, 6 weeks. And so we went to zero revenue, and we stayed zero revenue for 6 months. And I was able to keep everybody on with like a limited budget and a limited, we kind of stretched the dollars. But, after 6 months, like it still wasn't coming back. We'd had the vaccines yet, and people just were so split on whether to do a show or not. And so we shrunk the team down to 5 people in September of 2020. And that was just a terrible day for those people and for me and for the existing team. And nope, that's a lose situation. And then the phone started ringing about a week later. It's the darndest thing. We started to get a little bit of traction there at the end of 2020. And then by January, we were really getting phone calls again. And so we started rehiring. And so from January of 2021 until now, it's been 23 months or so. We've gone from 5 to 32. And most of those are new folks. When we had to lay off and scale the business back, I really care for these people that work for me. And I told them, it's like, I don't know how long this is going to last. You need to go get a different job. You need to get a different career. You need to change, because this could take a really long time. And so most of those who we brought back or there's a few that we brought back, but most of the positions that we've brought back are new people. And so it's been an incredible ride the past 23 months of going from kind of surviving to thriving. And we're really proud of where we are, as events are stronger than ever now,
Well, and it's interesting because, certainly, I mean, my organization, we've hosted live events, we've done virtual events. A lot of our customers, we've helped with, planning and executing conferences from, concepting to, all the way to making them happen. And so we've kind of followed this as well. Everything went from, it was all live, and then it was all virtual, which it was interesting because people were like, we thought we were going to save all this money, and we ended up like not saving any money at all because it was just as expensive. What, are there any kind of learns about, any of the work that you've done from like virtual that you think are, helpful or appropriate as we kind of like talk about that and then the segue into live again?
I love that. Yeah. During that season when I was popping onto things like this and honored to always be a guest and kind of share the expertise from being boots on the ground, I was talking about that left and right. There was this misunderstanding of, oh, it's virtual, it'll be cheaper. And yes, you're not buying the box lunches and you're not having the hotel rooms and the flights and things, but most of those costs were on the attendee side. As far as the core budget, production actually ended up being more expensive a lot, because in the room, you only need maybe 1 or 2 cameras. It's just everybody can see the stage just fine. Let's just do IMAG and put the live shot up on the big screen. But virtually, that gets pretty boring. It's one thing to do a quick webinar like this, but it's another thing to do a 4-day national conference, with the camera shot just kind of looking like this. And so it added a ton of costs with cameras and production value. If you watch television, if you watch football or Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, whatever you want, there's a lot of cameras. There's a lot of production value that keeps you engaged from home. And so that was kind of that season. Now that we're coming into more of a hybrid universe, which I think is kind of here for the long haul, you've got an in-person audience, but there's still some people who couldn't make it, or you're able to sell more tickets, which I love, at a lower price. And then that scales. So whether you have 50 people watching or 500, then that helps the budget and helps sponsors have a bigger reach. It's just great. Like, this hybrid world has so many benefits as we're coming out of it. And a lot of that is kind of carried over. Of course, we're not working with double budgets. Suddenly we don't have all the virtual budget and then all the in-person budget, but together production value overall has increased, because I think people's standards are a little higher. It's like, I can't come to all the conferences. The ones I go to need to be really good. And so production value is definitely in higher demand now, because people have seen what it looks like when it goes bad, and they don't want to waste their time on kind of lousy experiences.
And where does that, where is that money going for production value? Is it going into more cameras, better lighting, or is it more of the kind of like the what I don't guess it's like not necessarily post-production, but like, the guy running the board? Where's that money going?
Yeah. So, and this is all kind of maybe in the past, maybe 6 months, and then we're kind of reaching this climax of like, now we're coming into a downturn. So there's a whole nother conversation there. But this year, wages are through the roof, as everybody knows in every industry. A lot of costs like transportation and stuff is insane, supply chain. And so a lot of that cost is going to not fun stuff, like stuff you don't even see, like the very speakers that were here before, now they just cost more to get because they're not making as many anymore. And the people all scattered and those rates are up. And a lot of it is just flat, just year over year, unfun rising costs. Mm-hmm. With anything that we have left, then yeah, it has been a few more cameras. It's been a little bit cooler set design. So the stage is not just black pipe and drape. Mm-hmm. And it's been a little bit working a little bit harder on the more creative side. We're the nuts and bolts technicians who are running everything and making it clean, but we've really loved working on more agency side like y'all with the creative side. Let's make these presentations really good. Let's have a whole day just of rehearsals to kind of tighten this up a little bit and help presenters be a little smoother. Let's package this a little better. That's where I've really liked to push stuff in the past, say 12 months. Is really increasing the production quality and the production value and some of the more soft skill stuff, just because people expect it now.
Yeah, and I mean, I think back, and I mean, at the events that we were part of, and I mean, we've, from 2013, 2014 up to right before the pandemic, we would do our Influence HR conference. That was ahead of the big, trade show in our industry, HR Tech. And it's just, we were doing it in Las Vegas at, one of the big casinos, or at the McCormick Center in Chicago. And it just what was always, interesting / frustrating for me is just like, you don't know what you're going to get when you walk in terms of like, who's going to be helping you in the room. I mean, if you had like a manager on site that was thinking about all those things, you had a really good day or a really good couple of days. But it's just like, you could also come in and it's just like you would have the gang who couldn't shoot straight. It's just like you're getting feedback, it's just like the lights are cutting out and you're just like, does anybody here know how to do anything? And it's just if as an event, someone who's like a chief marketing officer, for instance, who is planning an event, how do you kind of like mitigate the risk around that and make sure that you're actually knowing what you're walking into going into these events?
That literally like just turns my stomach to hear about that. I was literally on a call like 3 hours ago where somebody said that exact same thing. They were excited about starting to work with us in 2023. We've signed a couple things and they were talking about how that was before. They were just giddy with just meeting with us as an early meeting. And they said the same thing, Steve. They said, we used to walk into the room and you just kind of get whoever was scheduled that day. Maybe it's somebody who isn't really qualified to be on the board. They've kind of been a backstage hand and today's, they're just the only guy it's incredible to me to think about that on your biggest day of the year, on the thing that has the most, tendency to go wrong and the thing that most people can't jump in and fix. Like event planners can kind of jump in and fix the registration, or we can all kind of get all hands on deck and figure out this, that, or the other, but nobody can really fix it. It's amazing to me how many people at first kind of chance that to just the in-house AV team, but that's kind of the natural MO. You go to sign the venue contract. They tell you have to use these guys and you don't, but you do. And then off you go and you're signed up with them. And we've really seen the highest value of event planners taking us with them, where they don't have to start over with a new AV team in every city, but they say, hey, we did one with you guys. Now, our CEO likes to hear Michael Jackson when he walks up on stage, and our CFO likes prompter, but she wants it here and not here, and all the nuances, and don't say this, and we don't like to see green in the lights, and we want, all those nuances. Once you do that once, we've got it. And then we're with you, and it's the same leadership, it's the same crew, and you're just taking us with you. And if we were based in Los Angeles and we're already expensive to begin with, no, you wouldn't want to fly us to Denver, but we're in Arkansas. And so we're pretty low cost. So when you add that transport on top, it's not that crazy for us to come to Denver and do a show. And that's been our business model, is just people who kind of get fed up with chancing it at the in-house AV and say, we've really got to get this right this year, guys. Like we had attendee complaints next year. Let's get it right. They reach out to us, we start to go with them, and it smooths it all out. But that is the standard MO. I mean, you're not crazy. That's pretty much how everybody starts until they snap and they get fed up, and then they start to take us with them.
And so I guess then my next question would be, okay, so what's the cost benefit to, not just going, I mean, there's the pain factor and there's the ambiguity factor, but in terms of like hard dollar costs, how much, either more or less is it if we're like, hey, we're not going to go with the in-house AV team at McCormick or at Mandalay or wherever, and we're going to, bring in someone like you, what does that look like typically?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. Yeah, typically it's less than 20% more.
Okay.
And so it's not double or something. And not everybody can afford 20% more. A lot of people say, you know what, we're already tight on catering this year. This year's not the year. But typically, if they've had a really bad year, they say, we got to fix this AV stuff. We got to fix production. And what do we need to do? And so again, when we've got kind of heartland America, central, center part of this country, Arkansas prices, even with flights and semi, we're pretty competitive, especially in some of those bigger markets where they're not used to having to compete. We can come in and do that. And then I get to import that cash back into our little Arkansas economy and build jobs here and give people opportunities here that I'm really excited about. But it's usually less than 20%. The times that it's not, we just lose the bid. There's certain times, for whatever reason, if you're in a city and they're really desperate or they messed up last year and so they're giving you a sweetheart deal, like, we get it. If you're getting 3 bids, we'll throw a hat in the ring. If it doesn't work, it's okay. But we win more than we lose. Typically it's enough, just a little bit more that they're like, it's a little bit more and it's way better. And so it's almost like an insurance policy of making sure it's going to go right. And so off we go. It's not that big of a stretch. Like I said, if we're based in Chicago or LA or something like that, it would be a big stretch to travel us on top of those. But by being here, it's just my hometown. It's just where I want to be. But it keeps our cost of living low. And so it really makes us competitive nationally, or we wouldn't have grown like this. We would just be a little Arkansas wedding DJ service or something. We'd have like 3 employees and not 32. We've grown because the numbers have made sense all over the country. And so we continue to scale.
Well, and I guess so something that's interesting, and this is something that we've talked about a lot in our previous conversations is, if I rewind to 2019 and doing an event there, it's just like, great, you show up, you're doing an event. It's just, you're only concerned with, it's a live event. You're concerned about the in-person experience.
Mm-hmm.
And, in 2018, 2019, it was just starting getting to, hey, let's stream this. Well, now it's just like coming out of the pandemic. What I think is interesting is like having gone to some live events and there's a lot of energy there. People are excited to be back face to face, but you can't go back to the way things were. You have to think about that streaming audience. And so it's just like, in terms of like thinking about that sort of dynamic right now at a time when a lot of marketing leaders are thinking about, hey, great, I need to do live. I've got to make sure there's a great streaming experience. Oh, but my budget got cut for next year. How am I going to make all this work? So I know that you're probably dealing with that a lot. What kind of advice can you offer around, creating a great in-person experience, but also, enabling that streaming sort of virtual experience as well?
This is what I'm most excited about, Steve. This is what I'm most excited about talking about. I'm just glad we're here and I'm ready to talk about this stuff, because the streaming thing before the pandemic was a luxury.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, well, nobody's going to hop on the stream. Everybody's going to be here in person. I guess we can try this, or something that's not going to go anywhere, but it's not really a luxury anymore. It's almost like you can't build a building that just has steps. Like there has to be a ramp to get into a building. You can't just not have a ramp. Like it's got to be accessible to all people, whether they choose to come or not, or whether they can't come or something comes up or whatever. You have to have that accessibility. Mm-hmm. What I get excited about is once you are streaming, whether you have 10 people coming or 100 people coming, and that, when I'll say tickets, like selling tickets, mm-hmm. But even an internal event. So for an external event, selling tickets, if you sell 10 or 100, that's pure profit. It's scaling without any added cost. Okay. Once you're streaming. But even an internal corporate event, we do a lot of corporate meetings and associations and things, and those aren't necessarily ticket sales, but that's exciting because that's once you've got 100 people coming or 10 people coming, you're saving all that money on flights and lodging and food, but you're not adding cost to do it.
Right.
And so ironically, what was viewed before the pandemic is like, oh, streaming's a nice to have, that's going to add cost to the budget. Now it doesn't add cost to the budget if your overall event headcount can come down because of it. And that's what I get most excited about, is in convincing these people who have had 1,000-person conferences, hey, let's cap it at 800. Let's just sell out. Let's just sell out at 800. It's totally fine. And let's have 200 people be online. 50 or 100 of those people want to be online anyways. The other 100 who didn't want to be online, who just came in late this year, they're going to sign up next year earlier. You can raise ticket prices or grow it next year over, but it's become strategic and really advantageous to kind of separate that out and to have it.
Okay, now I want to pause that because you're blowing my mind here. I hadn't thought about this. So it's just like, great. So if you're doing 1,000-person conference and you're having to get a room somewhere that fits 1,000 people and then have room for breakouts and things like that, what you're saying is, hey, go with a smaller venue, yeah, definitely sell out, but, create a better virtual experience, sell those virtual tickets, and then being able to kind of see those benefits, in year 2 and 3 after from it.
So many of our clients, and I get it, committees and planning committees and boards, and everybody gets excited about numbers. Our conference has 2,000 people. That's exciting. I totally get it. The bigger you get, the less options you have for a venue, and the venues that are large enough know it. And there's some leverage there where it's like, well, you can't go anywhere else. And so here's the rate. And so scaling your conference is not linear. It becomes exponential because some of those costs in those places, they're very aware of it. Right. But by staying a little bit lean and staying nimble and kind of staying small, you can make it a little more exclusive. And ironically, what I learned, and I didn't see this coming, it's not my idea, that when we started doing streaming, sponsors got more excited about it. You'd think, oh no, our sponsors need to know that there's 2,000 people at this thing and they don't want to have, a presence there if there's not going to be 2,000 people in person. Pandemic changed that. And we started really getting creative with how we place sponsors. We started getting creative with, hey, if we've got water on stage, like, what is that water? Well, now it's not just people in the room who can't even see that. Like, we got a close-up of that on the stream. People are seeing that at home on the stream. We started putting sponsor logos, like, this is silly, but like putting a little sponsor logo down here in the corner, like the bug that's on the stream's provided by so-and-so. If we're going to take a break and attendees are going to take a restroom break, we can go to looping slides. We can play ads. We played commercial breaks. We did all sorts of stuff during the fully virtual days that sponsors were actually like, take my money. This is actually the highest value yet, because last year all I got was my logo about this big on the back of the t-shirt, or I got a, little logo in the cafe or something. Now I've got like everybody's eyeballs during that 15-minute break are on this, or they're on this. And there's just so many ways that sponsors are happier. You create a little bit of supply and demand for the attendees. That home folks that want to stay at home, you just sold them a ticket and they weren't going to come anyways. Those 100 people, he said, I'm just not coming this year. You can still sell that revenue. It makes it way more shareable on social media. You can give it a shout out. It's not crazy. What seemed like a more expensive thing before the pandemic, really can save money now. And you can just move that slider. You can say it's 800 to 200. You can say it's 500 and 500. Like, you can scale down and say, this is what our budget is now. We're in a downturn, we're in a budget. Yeah. And so we're going to cap it at this level. And then we can still hit our numbers. These people they're just going to stay home,
Wow. Okay. Well, and I guess then the other thing I'm thinking is, it's just like when you're talking about, when you're going to a venue, and of course they're telling you, oh, you have to use the in-house team. There's always a lot of things that when you're planning a conference, and especially if you don't have as much experience doing that before, it seems like there's a lot of ways where people can put their hand in your pocket, and you don't think you have options when you really do. What are some things that are good to keep in mind when you are negotiating and putting together basically your AV plan and your streaming plan for a live event? What are some things that people need to know, especially this year, as they're looking to find ways to shave costs, but not reduce the quality of the experience?
Man, I could just get on a soapbox because I just see that all the time with different, there's all these parameters that you don't think about whenever you drop into a new city. Okay, we're going to be in St. Louis this year. We're going to be in Houston this year, or whatever. There's labor unions, there's the venue, there's the hotel, there's fees, there's service charges, 22% plus on top of everything else you do. There's so many things to watch out for. We do over 100 events a year. We're going to do 215, I think this year. It was 210. I think we're gonna do 215. We got 6 more to go here at the end of the year. And so a lot of that we get to see, a lot of that's really beyond our control because we're not an event planning firm.
Right.
We're not an overall marketing agency firm. We're just, I say just, I'm really proud of our people, but we're just the AV guys. We're just the production people. A lot of those costs can sneak up on you. The biggest thing that I always just ask people to think about is before you sign the venue contract, go ahead and at least get a quote from a production company, because production is usually the biggest line item on your budget. It's certainly more than, floral or whatever, whatever all these other vendors are, t-shirts, whatever. Production's typically top 3, if not number 1 most expensive thing. Get a budget and get a quote from them, even if you haven't signed a multi-year contract with them or you're not necessarily signed and committed. Get that quote. Make sure you have that when you're negotiating with your venue, because a lot of times the venues will work in fees and things, and you want to make sure that you have that on the table. Ideally, you've already signed with the company. Say, hey, we're signed with them, and so we need to negotiate this contract in a way that's friendly for that. Not, yeah, we'll agree to all these terms today, and then we'll see what happens, because some of the properties, they have fees and they have structures and things that are associated with that. And so our clients who get the most benefit and value out of us are clients who we've done a year with them, they love us, and so they do 3 or 5 years or whatever with us, and so we become an extension of their team, and so we actually go to the site visit with them. Right. And they're really more introducing us, almost like we're on the team, like we're contractors. They just need us 1 week of the year, but we are their AV team, and so we're able to kind of talk to the venue, understand the rigging cost, understand the internet cost, understand the load-in fees, all the union, the loading dock, so many things. We are usually there with them in the site visit. We're already part of the table. And so the venue salesperson already knows, okay, well, we don't have a shot at the AV. They've already contracted them. We need to make sure that this price makes sense without that. If they give you a really low price, it's because they're counting on winning the AV with it. And then that's going to put you in a bind where you're stuck with, as you said, third string or whoever. And that's just not good in a hybrid world. It's bad enough in a room. If you can't really see somebody clearly or can't hear them clearly, or they slide, you'll kind of put up with it because you're in the room. Right. And you can kind of squint or whatever and get over it. Online, if you can't hear, you're just turning it off. You just lost that attendee, and you just refunded that ticket, and you just irritated that sponsor. And so you really don't want to try. It's a higher stakes thing now that it's online. There's all sorts of other, I can just keep going on cost savings, but that's kind of what I would say on like the venue side of things.
Well, and another thing you brought up was just like talking with events planners. What do you think that really good events planners are doing differently in how they're working with you?
Mostly kind of what I just said about really putting the big rock in the jar first and saying, okay, who's the team we're going to have on this event? And then let's go pick a venue. Another thing that they're doing is really working 11 months out. The industry took a hit. I mean, a lot of people, like I said, even our own people that we couldn't keep during that downturn. There's not a lot of people out there. There's only so many people in the industry, and the industry has shot way back up. There's only so much gear. A lot of the gear manufacturers went bankrupt or repossessed, whatever. And so there's very limited resources. And so the venues are all there. The venues didn't get demolished or bulldozed. They may have gone bankrupt or changed hands, but the venues are all there. There's not a shortage of venues, but there is a shortage of workers. It's almost like a kind of an inverse thing there. And so I would secure the workers first, even if it's a balloon vendor, all these vendors and stuff that you want, I'd get those figured out and then take them as a squad to the venues. That's what we're seeing that works really well. And our clients who are benefiting the most are kind of handling it that way. But there's all sorts of other things to do to save costs, but that's one.
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that, just about sort of the talent drain from that industry. And it's just like, if things were tough before in terms of like getting a good AV team, I imagine that they're just exponentially worse now.
That's why we've hired so many in. We used to rely on a lot of freelancers and stuff, but a lot of those freelancers changed industries. And so we've really brought our team in and brought them in-house, or we're committing to them, we're committing to their 401k and stuff like that. But by having that, we can answer a 72-hour phone call from somebody and say, yep, we'll head there. It's our people, it's our truck. We'll be there and we're ready to go. It's been a strategic advantage.
Wow. So it's just like if I'm planning for next year, one of the things I'm kind of curious about is like, when you think about planning an event, obviously there's like the main session, where you have everybody in the room and you got kind of like the keynotes, but there's a lot of other like, breakouts that are, when people are planning to go to a conference, a lot of times it's what they're going to see in those breakouts, those kind of drill down sessions that are more important. What are some things to look out for if you're planning an event to make sure that you're not only getting a really great experience on that main stage, but getting a good, live and virtual experience on those breakouts?
Man, I'm fired up about this question. It's a great question, Steve. I love this one. And you hit the nail on the head, even just in kind of asking your question. You said, sometimes at a conference, maybe the breakouts are the most important thing. Other conferences that I go to, they don't care about the breakouts. Everybody's there to network. And if you're sitting in a 1 hour breakout session, you're not networking, they want to get back on the trade show floor in the hallway. And so during a downturn, like what we're all bracing for, and during a time when, event budgets may get canceled or they may have a target on their back, we've been talking till I'm blue in the face with clients just preparing for Q1 and Q2 about getting creative and making sure that their event doesn't cancel. Because again, our client is typically an event planner, whether they're on staff or contract or whatever. And so we're trying to empower them and help them with ideas and ammunition and talking points so that they can get creative, so that, an event doesn't have to cancel, it can just scale. And so we just compile all those into an article. I was sending that over when you guys said you wanted to do it. It's like, oh, great, we just did an article about that. So we can kind of combine forces and share the word. But some of the stuff we talk about in the article is to scale down, shorten the days. You're literally paying for, at least for us, I mostly speak to us, I can't speak to venues or whatever, but you're paying by the day. And so maybe what used to be like a 4-day conference, like kind of like people fly in and you have an opening GS general session that night and you have 2 full days and then kind of a closing general session, people fly out. Let's just get that down to 3 days. They can travel on either side of it. They can travel at night, travel at night. But now your production crew, you're only paying for 3 days. All the equipment, you're only paying for 3 days instead of 4, when this was really my fingers are going to get silly, but a half day here and a half day here. Shorten the days. You can literally save 6 figures by doing that. And I should use percentages instead of numbers, but like you can really bring these major conferences, 500, 2,000 person, multi-day conferences with a general session and a breakout. Sometimes the production budget is over 6 figures and sometimes multiple 6 figures, and you can save 6 figures by just shortening a day. Another thing we'll say is within it, within the day, within how you structure the day, you can really make the run of show more efficient. We're always preaching that. We've got a template on our website that we give away for free to kind of think about, plug in your times and think about how that shapes out. We're always trying to tell people to use that. It's helpful. But all of that stems from this question that I've been asking as I get to talk to senior leaders and stuff when they say, hey, let's talk to that vendor. They have any ideas? I talked to a senior leader this morning and I said, what's the goal? What is the actual goal? Is the goal networking? Because if it's networking, let's reduce the general sessions. Let's reduce the breakouts and let's focus on if people come to this for networking, let's do it. Is the goal of this, if it's a corporate meeting, to hear from leadership? Because if the goal is hear from leadership, let's not reduce the general session and let's keep the general session robust and let's have rehearsals for the general session. Let's help leadership look and sound their best. And leadership may be a guest speaker, it could be an author or whatever the conference is. We don't really, that's what's a little funny about our business. We don't really care what the conference is about. It can be about dentists or police. Right. We don't care. It's just, we're here to do a great job. Or the third thing that I often say, what's the goal is the goal what you said, Steve, which sometimes you go to a conference and you want to hear the specific information in breakouts. Mm-hmm. Well, breakouts always get a target on their back, because if you have a 800 person conference, you're going to have 8 100 person breakouts. And so that adds up when it comes to AV. That means we got 8 screens and we got 2 speakers per room. So we got 16 speakers. We got a person, a tech in each room running it. So it's not running up and down the hallway trying to find somebody when the microphone doesn't work or something. We put a person in each room. Well, that adds up. And so often the breakouts get a target on their back and they start to say, hey, let's not put a person in each room, or let's just have 1 microphone and they can pass it on the panel. They get a target on their back, but I often like to say, in this conference, maybe breakouts are the point, and I'd rather scale down the general session or scale down the networking or reduce a day. But I'll wrap it up. But there's so many silly, just fundamental, pragmatic, practical things you can do. But it often takes me or somebody just speaking into that committee and speaking to that meeting, because people get so dead set. Well, it's always been a 4-day conference. We can't do that. Well, if we're talking about 4 days or nothing, if we're going from 0 to here, we can scale and keep the conference and be really smart. Even with overtime. The last thing, our industry bases everything on a 10-hour day. People don't think about if we have an open general session, we have a lunch general session, we have a dinner general session, then we're going to have an awards ceremony that night and then an after party. And, we got a 16-hour day here. You're trying to cram that in to save on a hotel room. with the attendees, but you might be paying tens of thousands of dollars in time and a half labor by the hour to go longer. Look at that stuff with your AV production partner before you sign the venue contract. You may not even need a whole day before you sign all the hotels and the food and beverage minimums and the room blocks. Look at that with them and say, hey, if we had 20% less this year because of the state of the economy, how could we get scrappy and smart? And all that stuff, we're just giving that away for free on our website. You can still use whatever vendor you've been with, whatever, that's fine. I respect that, but be smart and scrappy about it, because you don't have to make the general session suddenly really dull or lower quality or go with the in-house or cancel altogether. You can get scrappy. And I'm always trying to encourage a little inspiration from a third-party perspective.
Well, what's interesting to me is the fact that, a lot of times when you're planning a conference, AV is pretty well toward kind of the things you get to at the middle.
It's last. It's honestly usually people.
I was trying to be generous, but we'll just go.
I appreciate generosity, because nobody understands it. And so they just they deal with everything they understand. And then they're like, oh yeah.
Well, but it's just like, you're making a pretty good case. It's just like, you probably got to start with that, because if you're trying to shave 20-25% off of your total event costs, there's things like the length of your day, the number, there's just a lot of things where you can move a lot of levers that have a lot of costs that go into essentially low value areas, or what for the attendee is very low value.
Yeah, we just call it waste. It's just waste mitigation. It's like, let's get all this scraped out of here. It's a shame when people come to us, 30, 60 days before show, and all the plans are baked, and they say, okay, here, we need a quote for this. My team hates waste. They hate cost. They're always looking at it saying, why did they put an after party here? We could have helped them. But at that point, it's all baked in. You've announced it to the attendees. It's set. Here's what it is. And then sometimes we're the bearer of bad news, kind of the bad guys who are like, yeah, this is all overtime, or this is really expensive, and we hate that. We'd love to work with you next year. And so then usually the next year we can actually kind of help, and steer that stuff, because we're 11 months out, because they're with us now. But it's pretty tough when people think of AV last, and then all those costs add up, and they're not thinking about it. It's okay. They're using common sense, saying, well, let's have less hotel rooms, or let's have less days, or the flights make sense here, or let's work on. But just have that voice at the table, because production's expensive. Good production, expensive. We do small events, but most of our events are medium to large conferences. So that's an AV bill. Whether you use us or the in-house or somebody, you're spending at least $50,000. You're spending $100,000, $300,000. It gets expensive in a hurry when you have a multi-day conference like that. And so when you talk about shaving 20%, you could be saving $50,000, $75,000, $100,000. All of a sudden, we're not as worried about the hotel rooms or the flight times or the shuttles. Like, all that kind of starts to fade away. But people don't understand AV. They kind of downplay AV. They think of just the nerd in the back pushing the fader or something. And so it gets put down on the list, and then it kind of surprises them later. And most event planners don't stay in the role very long. So by the time you get good at it, you get tired of it, because it's very tiring. You get out of it. And so we're always having to re-educate, because people are usually pretty new. But if you've done a few and you've looked at your budgets, if you've been doing this for 10 years, then okay, good production isn't cheap. Let's figure that out early and let's slot it.
Wow. Okay. Well, we're getting close to time here. And, one of the things I just going to want to close on is just kind of asking you the question. It's just like, if I'm a CMO and I'm planning an event this year, what have we not talked about that I probably need to know or need to hear?
That's good. Let me think for just a second. I think,
go ahead.
Well, I think to kind of summarize a few of the things, working with y'all, working with any agency, those are folks that have a seat at the table early, because you're literally branding the conference. You're deciding, who's speaking at this, what's the strategy and things.
Yeah.
And I would think if I'm a CMO, if I'm really dreaming this out and I've got the whiteboard out, I really am not thinking about AV. It's not on my mind.
No.
It's just way, way, way down on the list. But in an economic downturn, when we're trying to save 20-25%, I'd bring the AV partner to the table relatively early. I wouldn't be nervous about if they're going to try to scoop or snipe this out of the budget. I would be pretty upfront about, here's what we spent the last few years on budget. Here's kind of what we have.
Yeah.
And then I would realize that they can not only drive costs down and strategic logistics, they can drive sponsorship up. They can keep sponsors happier. They can drive attendee up, like registrations up, by offering the hybrid. They can do all of that. And then they can also bring clout to the conference by spending budget on things that are going to matter on Instagram, like lighting, things that are going to really make the conference look legit, and pulling the records out and posting highlight reels afterwards and really hyping it up. It's amazing the clients that we've been with, you know, some of them for 5-8 years, they grow, and they grow really well. But it's because they're leveraging us and because they're leveraging quality production. And when I look at the ones that find us that have kind of been stagnant for 10 years, and then they find us, I always smile, because I think this is just like tapping into oil or gold or something. They're going to start to scale now because they're going to start to leverage production as a seat at the table by saying, hey, we're with these guys for 3 or 5 years. Let's stick together. So it's not a new thing here at the end of the show. I think it's a repeat kind of theme, but it's amazing what kind of free advice, you know, that you can get from your production partner, wherever you are in the country, when you bring them to the table early and ask for their opinion. It's amazing how many times people get it wrong. And so my whole team's just got a whole list of waste that people have wasted this year, that we'd say, well, don't do this, this, and this, and here you go for cost savings. And also, have you thought about this to leverage the sponsorships and the sales? I think it's incredibly untapped free consulting and knowledge.
Well, Cameron, this has been an incredibly valuable little bit of time for me. I've learned so much more that I know that I'm going to apply as we're looking at getting our live events back up and running. Thanks so much for making some time in your day.
I'm always happy to, Steve, and I'm happy to share this. That's why we're trying to publish more of it and just put it out there online. I'm happy to take a call from anybody, even if we can't help. Even it's like, hey, we're already contracted with the in-house, whatever, we can't help. I can help even navigate that. I love things going well. I hate when things are wrong, and I hate waste. And so anything I can do to help, just consider me your friend in the production world on all the event side. I'm happy to lean into that stuff. And anybody else on my team that can help just speak to something, and we'd be happy to take a look at it.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Cameron Magee. Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks, Steve.
Have a happy holiday.
You too.